So Maria, I was hoping, as someone who teaches, future leaders in educational policy, what are some of the challenges that you see to educational equity issues, whether it's in the K through 12 context, whether it's in the higher education context? And I know that there are some creative solutions that leaders are implementing to address not equality, but actually equity for some of our younger students. So I was hoping you could speak to that a little bit.
Sure, I'll do the best I can. I'd like to start. I don't know if everybody's seen this famous image of the equality versus equity, because sometimes, people might not understand what it looks like. So I'll just show you really quickly this famous image of these three people, all different sizes, kind of representing what they have, what resources they have. And if you give each of them the same thing, which would be equality, they still might not be able to get what they need or see what they are trying to see. But if you give each one what they need, then that makes up for usually a long history of inequality, right? Then it can be equitable. So that's an image that's pretty famous, that's out there, that can kind of show you visibly what that looks like. As it relates to your question, there's a long list of inequities as it relates to education that have been pretty much exacerbated right now during COVID. And, we were talking right before the panel started just about this idea of school districts giving the equipment to students. So we're going to make sure everyone has iPads, right? We're going to make sure everyone has laptops. But we know that many Americans don't even have access to internet. And so I think oftentimes inequities stem from assumptions, from positionalities that aren't representative of all experiences. So I would just, some of the things off the top of my head, that I can think about, obviously technology, not only the equipment, but everyone having access to basic internet. It seems minimal, but that is not the case across our country. I would also say, particularly if I could speak about this COVID period, because I truly believe that education is going to shift because of this. It will never look the same. So it's kind of difficult to speak about, our past view of inequalities and inequities across the education system without kind of looking at this pandemic and how things might change for good. I'm really, really curious now and looking into doing some research about mental health support systems in education, because, you have students going to school right now that may have just lost their cousin, their brother. They're seeing a lot more death, not only with civil unrest, but they're seeing death with COVID, which is happening. We've hit like over 200,000 now in the US. And so we know that teachers have long been given the responsibility of playing a billion roles, right? Sometimes they have to be mom, dad, they have to be counselor, they have to be best friend, they have to be, social worker. But oftentimes where some inequities lie is teachers don't always have the tools to do that. Teachers aren't trained psychologists, and they certainly don't have the tools they need to play all of those roles in our students' lives. And so the role of the teacher itself is evolving, and so should the expectations and resources that are needed to do those things. And I would also just say, particularly just related to the civil unrest, and I just like to take a moment, just to recognize how broken our country is right now. I think that's really important to just pause and take note of that. There's a lot going on, and it's important for us to dealing with multiple things right now. And with our varying levels of privilege, I can say that because we're all sitting on a panel right now and having a conversation about these things, that there are people that don't have as much privilege as we do. And so it's just important to recognize that. With that being said, teachers don't always see all of the disadvantages and inequities that their students experience just by looking at them. Okay, so context matters. And how can we train teachers, administrators to understand context and see context? That takes real professional development, not signing in and out on a sheet of paper every couple of weeks for PD. That's not going to do it. So, and we know that PD looks different 15 minutes away in a different district. And so anyway, I could go on and on, but I definitely think that there is a very clear relationship between economic disparities and educational disparities that can't be ignored. We will not be able to solve one problem without the other. And I think that's going to be the job ahead of us, is to really attack those areas.